The stars stretched endlessly, cold and distant above the alien world of Xylaris. The planet's skies were a tapestry of shimmering colors cast from its twin suns. Yet to the queen of the insectoid hive, the brilliance felt hollow. Her throne chamber was filled with attendants, guards, and advisors, yet the silence was heavy. She had not spoken in many cycles. Her daughter, the princess of the hive, had been taken by raiders during a border conflict. The hive had searched, sent scouts, even offered riches to mercenaries who claimed to know something, but nothing returned. The queen felt the ache deep inside, though her people did not speak openly of such emotions. Duty was above all things, yet for a mother, the loss of her child pierced deeper than duty. She remained still on her throne, her many eyes fixed on the distant stars through the open chamber dome, hoping against reason that her daughter might still be alive. Far away, on the edges of the galaxy, a lone human ship drifted through a broken field of asteroids. The vessel was old, patched many times with mismatched plates, and carried the marks of too many battles against the void. Inside, Captain Daniel Reyes studied the flickering screen on his console. Supplies were running low. Fuel reserves were dangerously close to empty. He had been stranded for weeks after his trade convoy was destroyed by raiders. His crew was gone, his home far away, and his chances of survival slim. Still, he held on. Humans had a habit of refusing to give up even when reason told them it was over. The sensors crackled, pulling his attention. A faint signal blinked across the display, strange but consistent. At first he thought it might be just noise, another echo bouncing across the asteroid field. But when he tuned the frequency, he realized it was a distress beacon. The code was alien, sharp patterns of sound unlike any human transmission. Daniel leaned closer, narrowing his eyes. A distress signal meant someone was in trouble, and someone in trouble meant raiders. He hesitated, his instincts warning him. Raiders controlled this region, and to move closer meant danger. But something inside him stirred. The voice of his mother, long gone, echoed in memory. "If you see someone in need, Daniel, and you can help, then do it. Don't look away." With a tired sigh, he set his course toward the signal. Hours later, hidden among the shattered rocks of the field, Daniel watched through his ship's worn scope. The source of the beacon came from a massive raider vessel, dark and jagged like a predator waiting in the dark. Slaves were often held on ships like this. His jaw tightened. He remembered stories of raiders tearing colonies apart, selling families to the highest bidder. He could ignore it, drift away, save his last fuel for a better chance. But he couldn't. It was not in him to abandon the helpless. His ship was small, underarmed, and weak compared to the raider cruiser. Yet his mind worked quickly. Humans were not the strongest in the galaxy, nor the fastest, but they had always survived through one thing: finding a way where none seemed possible. Daniel prepared a boarding maneuver. He knew it was madness. Alone, with only a patched suit and a half-working rifle, he had no real chance. But he whispered under his breath, a habit when fear pressed against him. Better to try than to do nothing. His ship glided closer, silent among the drifting stones, until it latched onto the raider's hull with old magnetic clamps. With his suit sealed, he stepped into the void and cut through the thin plating near a maintenance port. Inside, the air smelled of oil and decay. Shadows filled the narrow corridors. He moved carefully, listening, every nerve on edge. The deeper he went, the more he realized this ship was not just a raider base. It was a prison. Behind thick bars, creatures of many species huddled in silence. Their eyes followed him with fear and hope, too weak to cry out. He had seen this before on distant colonies, and his stomach turned. He pressed on, searching, until he found the source of the distress beacon. It came from a cell at the far end, where a single figure sat upright, bound by chains of strange metal. She was unlike any being he had seen. Her body shone with a faint iridescence, armored plates patterned with elegant markings. Her large eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Filled with both defiance and exhaustion, she stared at him, and in her language the distress beacon translated her words into his helmet. "Who are you?" Daniel froze for a moment. He had heard of her kind before, the insectoid people of Xylaris, but never met one in person. He guessed this must be someone important. The way she carried herself, even in chains, spoke of pride and breeding. "I'm human," he answered simply. "I heard your signal." She tilted her head, confused. "Humans, fragile. You cannot fight them." Daniel gave a small, grim smile. "Fragile, maybe. But I don't like bullies." Without another word, he aimed his tool and cut through the locks. Sparks flew. The chains fell and she stood taller than him, her body trembling but her eyes burning with sudden hope. The alarms blared. They had been discovered. Daniel cursed under his breath and pulled the princess along. She stumbled at first but kept pace, surprised by his refusal to let go of her hand. Together, they ran through the corridors as raiders stormed behind them. Daniel fired his rifle, not with perfect aim but with the desperate precision of someone who had no choice but to win. The princess stared in shock. He fought not for survival alone but for her, someone he had just met. That spirit confused her, yet she could not look away from it. For her kind, risk was always weighed against duty and gain. For him there was no hesitation. He chose to fight because it was right. They burst back into the chamber where his ship was docked. The clamp strained as the raider ship shifted course, but Daniel forced her inside and sealed the hatch. Engines roared weakly as his vessel detached, breaking free into the asteroid field. Raider fighters scrambled, but Daniel knew these rocks better now. He twisted the ship, ducked into shadows, and used the debris to confuse their sensors. The princess watched, amazed by how a human with so little still fought as though he commanded a fleet. Finally, with a sharp dive into the field, the raiders lost them. Silence returned, heavy but victorious. Inside the small ship, Daniel leaned against the console, breathing hard. The princess sat across from him, her gaze steady. "You risked everything," she said softly, her translator struggling with the weight of her voice. "Why?" He met her eyes, tired but calm. "Because you needed help." She stared, trying to understand. No promise of reward, no gain, no oath of loyalty. Just that simple answer. She had never heard such a thing before. In that moment, as the stars stretched endlessly before them, something stirred inside her. Trust in the strange, fragile creature called human. The small ship drifted silently after escaping the raiders, its engines weak and tired from the chase. Inside, Daniel adjusted the controls, keeping the vessel hidden between the broken bodies of old asteroids. His chest still rose and fell heavily, but his eyes stayed sharp. He knew raiders rarely gave up. Somewhere out there they were searching, waiting for him to make a mistake. The alien princess sat quietly in the co-pilot seat, her body still trembling from exhaustion and pain. The chains had left marks on her armored skin, and though her kind could endure much, the long imprisonment had drained her strength. She watched Daniel work with steady hands, patching broken wires and rebalancing fuel flow. His face was pale, his uniform scorched, but he kept moving as though the danger had not shaken him. She spoke at last, her voice carried through the translator. "You could have left me. Why did you not?" Daniel glanced at her, then back at the controls. "Because you needed me," he answered simply. "And I couldn't turn away." The princess tilted her head. Her people had always acted with reason, weighing the benefit of every action. Sacrifice was made only for the hive, for the queen, yet this human acted with no gain, no order, and no duty. She found it difficult to understand, yet something about it unsettled her in a way she could not explain. Daniel turned to her again. "What's your name?" She hesitated. To share her name with an outsider was no small thing, yet he had risked everything for her. "I am Princess Serenia of Xylaris." Daniel gave a faint smile. "Serenia. Good. At least now I know who I almost died for." His attempt at humor was strange to her, yet she felt a strange warmth inside, something she had never experienced in captivity. She lowered her gaze, unsure why his simple words touched her more than elaborate oaths ever had. The ship jolted suddenly, pulling them from the moment. Lights flashed red across the console. Daniel cursed softly under his breath. "They're tracking us," he muttered. Serenia stiffened. "They will not stop. Raiders do not forgive escaped prisoners, especially not me." Her voice grew quieter. "They know who I am. They will chase until one of us is destroyed." Daniel looked at her, his jaw set. "Then we make sure it's them." He leaned forward, adjusting the course. The ship curved deeper into the field, weaving between jagged rocks. He had little fuel, limited weapons, and only his stubborn will, yet he refused to give in. Humans had survived worse odds before, he reminded himself. This was just another impossible fight. Hours turned to days as they drifted from one hiding place to another, always moving, always watching. Supplies ran low and Daniel rationed what little they had. He offered her most of the water, insisting she needed it more. Serenia resisted at first, but when she saw the firm look in his eyes, she accepted, though it puzzled her deeply. In her world, strength was preserved for the hive's future. Here, a fragile creature gave away his share without hesitation. She watched him repair broken systems with scraps, turning useless parts into tools. He improvised every day, making solutions out of nothing. She realized that where her people relied on structure and planning, this human thrived in chaos. He adapted like flowing water, shaping himself to every problem. Slowly, she began to see why he had survived where others would not. One night, if night could be measured among endless stars, Serenia asked him, "Are all humans like you?" Daniel paused from tightening a panel and looked up. "Some are better, some are worse. But we all try." She thought about his answer for a long time. It was not prideful, not arrogant. He did not claim greatness, yet his actions spoke louder than any claim. She found herself studying his face when he wasn't looking, trying to see what made this human different. Was it courage? Was it stubbornness? Or something more? Their uneasy rest was broken when the ship's alarm screamed again. Raiders had found them. Engines roared outside as predator-like fighters closed in. Daniel rushed to the controls, hands flying across switches. Serenia steadied herself, gripping the side rails. "We cannot outrun them," she warned. "Your ship is weak." Daniel's eyes burned with determination. "Maybe we can't outrun them, but we can outsmart them." He threw the ship into a dive, plunging between two massive asteroids. The raiders followed, weapons firing, blasts lighting the dark. Daniel swerved hard, scraping the hull against stone, but he kept going. Serenia gasped as debris shattered around them, but Daniel only grinned through his fear. "Come on, you bastards, follow me in," he muttered under his breath. He led them deeper into the maze of rock and shadow. Then he saw it, a cluster of unstable stones, cracked and ready to break. He pushed the ship straight toward it. Serenia shouted, "You will kill us both!" But Daniel didn't slow. At the last moment, he pulled sharply to the side. The raiders behind weren't so lucky. Their fire struck the weak cluster, and in an instant the stones collapsed, crushing the fighters in a storm of rock. Explosions lit the darkness. Daniel's ship spun wildly, but he regained control, slipping into the clear. Silence returned once more. Serenia stared at him, her eyes wide. "You planned that," she whispered. He shook his head. "Not planned, just guessed, and hoped it worked." She blinked, stunned. To her people, battle was precise, every step calculated. Yet this human survived through instinct and courage. He risked everything, trusted himself, and somehow won. She felt a strange respect take root inside her heart, stronger than before. When the danger passed, Serenia leaned back, exhausted. She thought of her mother, the queen, who must believe her lost forever. She thought of her people, who would never understand this fragile creature who fought with such reckless fire. And yet, in her mind, she whispered the truth she had seen. This human was stronger than his body suggested. His spirit was unbreakable. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Perhaps you are not fragile at all." Daniel looked at her curiously, but did not ask. He was too busy scanning for the next hiding place, too focused on keeping her safe. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need reward. He only needed to keep going. For the first time since her capture, Serenia allowed herself to hope. She was still far from home, far from her mother's arms, but she was not alone anymore. Beside her sat a man who refused to let her fall. A man who fought because it was right, not because he was ordered to. She looked at him, and in her heart she made a silent vow. She would remember this human forever. He had given her freedom, and perhaps without knowing, he had given her something even greater: faith. The small ship drifted through the silent sea of stars, its lights dim to avoid detection. Daniel sat at the controls, his eyes heavy but sharp, scanning the endless void for signs of raiders. Every hour felt like a test, every quiet moment filled with tension. He knew the raiders would not stop. They had lost prey, and pride alone would drive them to hunt again. Beside him, Princess Serenia rested in the co-pilot seat, her gaze fixed on the starfield ahead. She was silent most of the time, but Daniel had noticed the way her eyes softened whenever they met his. It was as though she was still trying to understand him, still measuring what kind of creature this fragile-looking human really was. Days passed, and resources grew thin. Water had to be rationed, food divided carefully. Daniel never complained, though Serenia saw him eat less than she did. When she confronted him, he only shrugged. You need it more, he said simply. That answer unsettled her more than hunger ever could. To her people, survival was measured for the hive. No one placed the life of another above their own unless commanded by duty. Yet here was a man who gave without command, who sacrificed without thought. It was strange, confusing, and in some secret part of her heart, inspiring. They stopped once on the ruins of an abandoned mining station, desperate to find supplies. The place was a graveyard, its corridors cold and silent, its machines broken and rusting. Daniel carried a light, his weapon slung over his shoulder as Serenia walked behind him. The shadows played tricks, and both of them felt the weight of unseen eyes. At one point, Serenia asked softly, "Why do you not fear even in places like this?" Daniel chuckled under his breath. "Who says I don't fear? I'm afraid all the time. I just don't let it stop me." That answer stayed in her thoughts long after they left the station with what little they could salvage. She wondered if courage was not the absence of fear, but the act of moving despite it. If so, then perhaps courage was the one thing this human had in endless supply. Their journey became harder when the raiders caught their trail again. Daniel detected their ships before they closed in, but escape was difficult with his vessel damaged and weak. Serenia saw the tension in his face as he planned their next move. She wanted to fight beside him, but she had no weapon, no training with human tools. Still, she spoke firmly. "You cannot protect me alone forever. I must help you." Daniel gave her a tired smile. "You already are helping. You keep me going." She frowned, not understanding. "I have done nothing." He shook his head. "You're alive. That's enough." The word struck her deeply. To him, her life itself was worth every risk. For the first time since her capture, she felt more than hope. She felt safe. The chase led them into a region of space scarred by the pull of a black hole. Broken moons circled in endless ruin, dragged slowly toward the darkness at the center. Gravity twisted the stars, light bending unnaturally. Daniel knew entering was madness, but there was no other way. "They won't follow this far," he muttered. Serenia watched the black hole with wide eyes. "You risk destruction." Daniel grinned faintly. "Better to risk it than let them catch us." He guided the ship into the broken orbit, weaving carefully between shattered rocks that moved like giants around them. The raiders followed, at first confident, but soon they struggled. The pull of the black hole tore at their ships, dragged them off course, ripped fighters apart like paper. Daniel, hands steady, turned his weakness into an advantage. He used the gravity slingshot, swinging his ship around broken debris to escape traps. Serenia watched him work, amazed. He did not rely on superior strength or powerful weapons. He relied on instinct, quick thinking, and the refusal to give up. Slowly, one by one, the raider ships fell into the dark, their screams lost in the void. Daniel guided their ship back into safer space, the danger behind them. When silence returned, Serenia looked at him as though seeing him for the first time. "You destroyed them," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No, the black hole destroyed them. I just let it happen." She frowned. "But you saw what others could not. You turned death into life. That is human." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe I'm just lucky." Serenia thought about his words for a long time. She remembered the way he had refused to abandon her, the way he gave up food and water without question, the way he fought not for power, but for her safety. She realized then that humans might not be the strongest or most advanced, but they carried something inside that others did not, something that changed the course of fate itself. That night, if night could exist in the endless dark, Serenia could not sleep. She watched Daniel as he sat at the controls, his eyes half closed, his body weary. She thought of her mother, the queen, who would never believe such a fragile creature could be a savior. She thought of her people, who would laugh at the idea of trusting one outside the hive. Yet here she was, alive only because of him. Slowly, she whispered, "Daniel." He turned, eyes tired but gentle. "Yes?" She hesitated, then spoke softly. "When I return home, if I return, my mother will want to know who saved me. What should I tell her?" He shrugged. "Tell her the truth. A stubborn human who didn't know when to quit." She smiled, the first true smile since her capture. "I will tell her you are more than that." The days ahead were long and difficult. Supplies grew thinner, engines weaker. Daniel kept pushing forward, his mind always working, his spirit unbroken. Serenia tried to help where she could, learning the controls, assisting with repairs. Slowly, they became more than escapees. They became a team. She began to trust him fully, not just with her life, but with her heart. And though he said little, she saw the way his eyes softened whenever she spoke, the way his hand lingered when passing her tools, the way he protected her without hesitation. It was unspoken, but real. Their journey was not over. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and danger still waited in the dark. But for the first time, Serenia felt the bond between them stronger than the fear of the raiders. She was no longer just a princess seeking safety. She was a survivor beside a human who had shown her what courage truly meant. And though neither of them said it aloud, they both knew the truth. Together, they had a chance. The stars stretched endlessly ahead as Daniel guided the ship through safe space, though neither he nor Serenia could forget the dangers they had escaped. The black hole, the raiders, and the wreckage of destroyed ships were still fresh in their minds. Serenia sat quietly watching him work. Each movement he made spoke of experience, of patience, and of a determination that refused to be broken. She admired him silently, trying to understand how such a fragile-looking creature could survive challenges that would destroy many stronger, larger, or more advanced beings. She had already begun to accept the human as more than just a rescuer. He had become a protector, a companion, and in ways she could not yet admit, a friend. Daniel adjusted the navigation systems, keeping the ship's course steady. "Almost there," he said softly. Serenia looked at him, her large eyes wide. "We are close to Xylaris?" He nodded. "Close enough that the Queen's scouts will detect me soon. I hope she's not hostile." Serenia felt a pang in her chest. The thought of her mother, the great Queen, standing in judgment over the human who had saved her, filled her with unease. Would the Queen accept him? Could she even believe such a thing was possible? The ship's sensors picked up signals from Xylaris. The hive was vast, with patrols and monitoring arrays everywhere. Daniel guided the vessel carefully, weaving through the outer layers of detection. "They'll see me eventually," he said. Serenia nodded. "They must," she said quietly. "But you have kept me safe. That is more than enough. Whatever happens next, I will not fear for my life." Daniel looked at her, surprised by her calm. Her words were confident, steady, and unshaken, despite the knowledge of what awaited them. He had seen courage before, but hers was different. Disciplined, honed by a lifetime of survival, yet softened by trust in him. As they approached the inner system, Xylaris came into view. The planet was breathtaking. Massive towers of chitin and crystal rose above the sprawling hive cities, glimmering in the twin sunlight. Streams of airships moved like schools of fish, carrying citizens, trade, and military vessels. Daniel's hand trembled slightly on the controls, not from fear of the world, but from the weight of responsibility. Every choice now mattered, one wrong move, and both he and Serenia could be seen as threats rather than saviors. The atmosphere of Xylaris felt alive as their ship descended. The air shimmered with a strange energy, almost like a living breath of the planet itself. Daniel adjusted the landing sequence, taking care not to alert nearby patrols. Serenia's heart raced. This was her home, the place she had feared she would never see again. Her wings, long folded under her armored carapace during captivity, unfurled instinctively, brushing against the sides of the ship. She felt the pull of the hive, of her mother, of everything she had left behind. Yet at her side was the human who had given her freedom, and her heart surged with a mix of relief and fear. The landing platform was massive, circular and surrounded by guards, though Daniel had timed his approach so they would not be immediately hostile. Serenia stepped forward as the hatch opened, the air rushing in with the hum of the hive around them. She felt her legs tremble. For a moment she thought she might collapse, but Daniel steadied her with a firm hand. "You're safe now," he whispered. "All of this is behind you." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Together they moved toward the awaiting contingent. The guards parted as she approached the center of the platform. There, upon a raised dais, sat her mother, the Queen. Her enormous form was both regal and terrifying, her many eyes watching carefully, analyzing every movement. The Queen's mandibles clicked softly in the way her people expressed thought and judgment. The moment froze as mother and daughter locked eyes. Serenia's heart beat rapidly. "Mother," she whispered. The Queen did not respond immediately, her gaze moving from Serenia to Daniel. Daniel stepped forward carefully, aware of the Queen's reputation for ferocity and intelligence. "I am Daniel Reyes," he said clearly, his voice calm but firm. I am the human who rescued your daughter." The queen's eyes widened, a subtle shift in her mandibles signaling her surprise. No human had ever been known to survive this close to Xylaris, much less to challenge the raiders and emerge victorious. She had expected her daughter either dead or enslaved. This creature was neither. Serenia moved closer to her mother. "I am safe, mother," she said. Her voice was clear, strong, yet filled with emotion. She took a deep breath, gathering the courage her mother had taught her since birth. "He saved me. He brought me home." The queen's gaze narrowed, studying Daniel carefully. He made no sudden movements, no attempt to bow, no display of submission. Instead, he stood tall, weary, but unwavering. His calm demeanor, combined with his courage, spoke volumes. The queen's mandibles clicked again, slower this time. She tilted her head slightly. "And you did this? For no gain? No command?" Daniel nodded. "No gain, no orders. I only wanted her to be safe." The queen's eyes widened further, scanning every detail of his form, every scar, every mark of fatigue. His small stature, his fragile appearance belied the immense strength of his will. The queen felt something she had never felt toward a human before. Respect. Not fear, not suspicion, but genuine respect. For a long moment, the platform was silent except for the soft hum of the landing pad. Serenia stepped forward, placing herself between her mother and Daniel. "Mother, he is not like other creatures we have encountered. He is remarkable. He saved me when no one else could. Please see him as I do." The queen studied her daughter's eyes, reading the truth and trust reflected there. She had always known her child to be wise, but this judgment was beyond what she had expected. She could sense the bond that had formed, the loyalty and bravery. Finally, the queen spoke, her voice deep and resonant, echoing across the platform. "You are a human, and you have earned my attention. Not through force, not through cleverness alone, but through courage, determination, and selfless action. These are qualities my people value above all. You have shown that even a fragile being can wield strength that changes fate." Daniel inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her words without arrogance. "Thank you," he said softly. "I only did what I could." Serenia stepped forward, her eyes shining with relief. "Mother, he is more than my savior. He is the reason I live, and he deserves to be honored, not punished." The queen's mandibles clicked slowly as she considered her daughter's words. She looked at Daniel once more, her many eyes reflecting a mix of awe and cautious admiration. "Perhaps humans are not to be feared as we believed. Perhaps in their fragility lies a fire unmatched." She gestured for him to step closer, and Daniel did, careful and respectful. The queen reached out a clawed appendage, touching his shoulder lightly, a rare gesture of approval and recognition in her species. Daniel felt the weight of her judgment, yet it was not fear he sensed. It was acknowledgement, respect, and a profound understanding. Serenia let out a sigh she had held for cycles. She was home, and the human who had fought for her had earned a place in her world, at least in her heart and her mother's eyes. The moment stretched long, but at last, the queen turned her gaze toward her daughter. "Serenia, you are alive, and you return with one who has proven his worth. You have survived what none thought possible. I am proud of you both." Serenia knelt briefly, a gesture of respect to her mother. Daniel remained standing, quietly observing, unsure of how to respond but grateful for the honor. In that moment, he understood that his actions, small as they may have seemed, had changed the course of a life, perhaps even a species' understanding of humanity. As the sun of Xylaris rose over the hive, reflecting light off towers and spires, Serenia felt the warmth of home and the weight of gratitude. Daniel stood beside her, humble yet strong, a living example of what humans could be when courage met compassion. Together they had faced impossible odds and survived, and now they stood in a new world, where trust and bravery were recognized, where human strength had reshaped not just one life, but the bond between species. The morning sun of Xylaris cast long golden rays across the hive city, illuminating the towering spires of chitin and crystal. The streets below buzzed with activity, though the people moved with a sense of caution and curiosity. Word had spread quickly that the princess had returned, alive and unharmed, escorted by a human, a species almost unheard of among them, known mostly through distant stories and warnings. Yet here he stood, at the side of Serenia, and the queen's acknowledgement had given him protection, if not full acceptance. Serenia walked beside Daniel, her armored legs moving gracefully, wings tucked neatly behind her back. Every step brought her closer to the Queen's court, where citizens and officials had gathered to witness the return of their princess. Some whispered fearfully about the human, unsure if he was a threat. Others stared openly, astonished at the tales of his bravery, the sheer audacity of a single human standing against raiders and winning. Serenia noticed the looks but said nothing. She had made her choice and she trusted Daniel completely. Without him, she would not be alive, and no whispers or glances could change that truth. As they entered the grand hall, the Queen rose to her full imposing height. Her many eyes swept over the assembly, her gaze finally resting on Daniel. He kept his posture straight, calm but respectful. There was no fear in him, only quiet determination, and that quiet strength was not lost on the Queen. She gestured for him to stand forward, to speak before the council and the people. Daniel hesitated, unaccustomed to ceremonies and pomp, but Serenia's firm grip on his arm gave him courage. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "I am Daniel Reyes," he began. "I am a human from a distant world. I came across Princess Serenia by chance and found her in danger. I did what I could to ensure her safety. I ask for nothing in return. I did what any being should do for one in need." The hall was silent. Even in a place where power and fear often dictated respect, honesty and humility had their weight. Serenia watched him, admiration and gratitude shining in her eyes. He had not exaggerated, he had not demanded praise, yet his courage spoke louder than any words. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice resonating through the hall. "Your actions are noted. Humans are considered fragile, often weak and unpredictable, yet you have shown that courage and wisdom can defy strength, that heart can surpass size and determination can overcome skill. You have done what many stronger, better equipped beings could not." The assembly murmured among themselves. Some still doubted, but the truth of her words could not be denied. A single human had altered the course of a crisis, and that fact alone demanded recognition. Serenia stepped closer to her mother. "Mother, he saved me. He did not do it for power or reward. He did it because it was right. Please, honor him not for who he is, but for what he has done." The Queen's mandibles clicked softly as she considered her daughter's plea. The weight of trust and truth in Serenia's eyes was unmistakable. She had been tested, challenged, and proven worthy. The Queen inclined her massive head, acknowledging the human beside her daughter. "Very well. Let it be known that Daniel Reyes is recognized as an ally of Xylaris, a friend to the Hive and a protector of the royal line. His courage and selflessness will be remembered." The crowd erupted in quiet cheers and murmurs of surprise. Some citizens approached, bowing in respect, others cautiously extending appendages to show acknowledgement. Daniel accepted with humility, uncomfortable with attention yet aware of its meaning. He had never sought fame or reward, but seeing the relief and joy in Serenia's eyes made every risk, every moment of fear, worthwhile. She glanced at him, her gratitude unspoken but clear. Without a word, she squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they now shared. In the days that followed, Daniel worked alongside the Hive engineers, learning about their technology and helping to repair systems damaged during the raider attacks. The princess remained by his side, guiding him, explaining the workings of her world and slowly teaching him the values and traditions of Xylaris. Despite differences in species and culture, they found common ground in logic, problem-solving, and trust. The Queen watched quietly, seeing the rare exchange of knowledge and respect between species. It was a small thing, but it mattered immensely. She recognized that through this human, her daughter had not only survived but had learned resilience, creativity, and courage in ways the Hive itself rarely encouraged outside of ritualized training. Serenia grew stronger each day, more confident in her abilities and more aware of the lessons Daniel had shown her. She learned to improvise, to think quickly under pressure, and to trust instincts rather than waiting for the Hive's calculated plans. Her people were efficient, precise, and loyal, but humans, Daniel had shown her, acted in the moment with conviction, even when the odds were stacked against them. She realized that true strength did not always lie in size, armor, or numbers, but in heart and will. One afternoon, Daniel and Serenia walked through the outer platforms of the Hive city, observing the citizens going about their daily routines. Children played, Adults traded goods and guards patrolled with quiet efficiency. Serenia watched carefully, pointing out nuances in behavior, explaining social structures and commenting on the differences between her people and humans. Daniel listened, fascinated. Every culture, every species had its own rules, its own ways of living. And yet in all of them, courage, empathy, and trust were what allowed beings to thrive. He understood that perhaps humans were not unique for their technology or power, but for the ability to care in ways others often ignored. As they returned to the royal hall, Serenia turned to him. Mother has accepted you, but it is not just that. You have changed how we see humans. Not as weak, but as capable, as brave, as remarkable. Daniel looked at her, his eyes tired but soft. I only did what I had to do. You were worth saving. She smiled, a mix of admiration and relief. You were worth much more than that. You taught me courage in a way the hive never could. The queen summoned them to the throne once more. She spoke to Serenia first, her voice firm but warm. Daughter, you have returned safely. You have survived the trials and have been guided by one whose kind is rare among the stars. Remember what you have seen. Trust is not given lightly, but when earned, it creates strength beyond measure. Serenia knelt briefly, bowing to her mother. I will remember, Mother, and I will honor the one who saved me. She turned to Daniel. And you? I will not forget. Daniel inclined his head, unsure how to respond. Yet the simplicity of her words spoke louder than any ceremony. The queen observed the moment, her many eyes reflecting understanding. In the vast galaxy, strength was often measured by power, by weapons, by domination. Yet here was a human, small and fragile in appearance, who had changed the lives of her daughter, her people, and perhaps even the way her hive viewed outsiders. It was a revelation. Courage and compassion could reshape worlds in ways force alone never could. Weeks passed, and Daniel prepared to leave Xylaris, though not without promises to return. He had no claim, no throne, no desire to dominate. He had acted once in a moment of need, and that was enough. Serenia accompanied him to the outer platform, her wings folding neatly behind her. You are leaving? She asked softly. Daniel nodded. For now. But I will return if needed, and if you ever call, I will come. She smiled faintly. Then you are more than a savior. You are a friend, and friends are never forgotten. As Daniel's ship lifted into the void, the queen watched silently from her throne. She had seen many warriors, many creatures of strength and cunning, but this human was different. He had no grand army, no advanced weapons, no expectation of reward. Yet he had altered the course of her daughter's life, proving that courage, selflessness, and will could surpass even the most formidable odds. She reflected quietly. Perhaps it was in the fragile humans that the galaxy's brightest fire burned, small yet unyielding, fragile yet capable of moving worlds. Serenia returned to her duties, but she carried the lessons of Daniel with her. She taught her people the value of courage, improvisation, and selfless action. Stories of the human who had saved the princess spread throughout Xylaris, and slowly, the perception of humans began to change. They were no longer just fragile outsiders. They were beings capable of greatness, a species whose strength came not from size or armor, but from heart and determination. And as Daniel's ship disappeared into the distance, moving toward unknown stars, he did so knowing he had made a difference. He had changed a life, shaped the understanding of a civilization, and proved what humanity had always known. Even the smallest, most fragile among us could shine brightest when courage, compassion, and selfless action led the way. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and wonders alike. Yet one human, one act of bravery, had left a mark that would endure for cycles. And somewhere on Xylaris, the queen, her daughter, and countless citizens would remember the lesson. Strength is measured not by size, nor weapon, nor armor, but by the courage to act when it matters most.